Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly. Warning, you're about to embark on a journey that goes down some pretty silly spinfoil, but spinfoil that has a lot of proof in my eyes. Per usual, the ideas are mine, the interpretations are mine, but ultimately, the decision to accept it or add it into your own thoughts is entirely on you. That being said, what can possibly be misconstrued and misinterpreted about the Nine? What can possibly go wrong with any of this mini-series we're going to have on these mysterious figures in Destiny lore? First off, I feel it necessary to not only catch everyone up on the ideas that the Nine have presented us with, but also make sure we're on the same page, or as close as we can get to it. We'll look into popular theories within this video of what each part of the old Grimoire card, Legends 2, holds for us, along with a bit of my own. We'll start by going point by point, so for those up on this stuff, give me a few minutes for those that may need a refresher. The Nine are survivors of the Cisjovian colonies who made a compact with an alien force to ensure their own survival. In brief, we don't know a lot about the colonies that were out in the solar system during the Golden Age. If we take a look at the old helmet, Long Tomorrow 9G, the flavor text reads, "Some of them survived. I know a fellow says he saw a wish dragon on Jupiter a ways back." Wish dragons has been widely agreed upon within the community as being the Ahamkara, so the question has always been what they may have to do with the Nine. The Nine are deep-orbit warminds who weathered the collapse in hardened stealth platforms. There's a point between two larger bodies out in space called a Lagrange point. This point in space allows for a third, smaller body to be stuck between these two larger forces. It's possible that these warminds could be stuck in deep orbit between Earth and Luna, or between the Earth and the Sun, or, any planet in the system because we started to explore and settle. This allows these smaller objects to be trapped in a centrifugal or very balanced gravitational hold between the two larger bodies. Just dropping the idea out there. The Nine are ancient Leviathan intelligences from the seas of Europa or the hydrocarbon pits of Titan. This one gets very detailed, but in short, the Leviathan is otherwise referenced twice in Destiny, once in the Grimoire within the Books of Sorrow within the first verse of the books, and again with the Leviathan that Calus is on. We now see Titan firsthand, but we haven't seen these hydrocarbon pits that have been spoken of, and it's possible we've seen some concept art for Europa, but I'm not holding my breath. Europa is a moon of Jupiter just like Io, so that makes things even more interesting, and a possibility that we could go there soon. The Nine arrived in a mysterious transmission from the direction of the Corona Borealis supercluster. The Corona Borealis supercluster is about 964 light-years in total distance. Totally a small place to figure out where this signal might be coming from. Yeah, really narrows it down. A supercluster involves tons of galaxy clusters that form a supercluster. The Corona Borealis constellation, for reference, looks like a crown, and the point of the crown is where this supercluster is located. Quite plainly, there's no way to fully narrow down this area of space of where this signal may be coming from. The Nine are the firstborn awoken, and their minds now race down the field lines of the Jupiter-Io flux tube. Of all of them, this seems the most weird, but so are the awoken, so whatever. A flux tube is a true thing, and one does exist between Io and Jupiter as is stated in the legend. They are magnetic fields that generate between two bodies, or just protrude out from a planet or sun. For instance, when the sun pops off a plume, it could be due to some of these flux tubes. The Nine are ghosts who peered the deep black without a ship and meditated on the hissing silence of the heliopause. You know what? I'm just gonna wait for it. We're gonna talk about this a long ways from now, but it'll be worth it. Moving on. The Nine are the aspects of the darkness, broken by the Traveler's rebuke, working to destroy us from within. This can be most related to what Xur has done for us, delivering questionable goods that are laced with Ahamkara bones and other goodies that the Vanguard has outlawed in either the Crucible or otherwise. That's the closest relation we may know of, however. You could possibly push it as far as Eris or Asher Mir being corrupted or touched by the darkness, but that's further speculation. The Nine is a viral language of pure meaning. Xur actually brings this up on a voice line in Destiny 2, saying, "To do what you say is to speak in a language of pure meaning." It's not exact to what the legend states, but none of them are. The Nine are the shadows left by the annihilation of a transcendent shape, burned into the weft of what is. The word shape within Destiny has some very interesting implications. The Vex, for instance, speak on their pattern that they try to make everything fit to. The same is true of Oryx, cutting down the light and just continuing to fight until something destroys him, by carrying out the idea of the one pure shape, which is to blend everything into darkness. It is quite possible that this link could go back to the darkness in some fashion, but this final point does line up with the rest of the legends, which is to say they don't really make a lot of sense. There's truth within them, and we'd start to hear a few of those truths from the Emissary, or at least so we can figure. I wonder if the ones we hear from her and Xur are the ones we should be taking a bit more at face value, however, but only on the parts that are referred to by each party. Xur only has the one new line for the time being, at least that I've heard so far, and we already talked about that, so let's move on to the Emissary. After going flawless, the Emissary starts to speak to you about some of these legends.
You are worthy. When the time comes, seek us out. Watch for us on the filaments of dark matter, in the hydrocarbon pits of distant moons. This? In the direction of the Corona Borealis supercluster. Pierce the lightless void beyond the northern skies and meditate in the hissing silence.
The Emissary mentions a few big pieces of these legends, but not the whole of them. It either serves to confuse us in showing they know of the legends and only speak on half of them, or it goes to make things a bit clearer in showing us what parts of the legends we can cut away and throw out. In either event, they seem to like to play riddles, games, and really get into our heads. Everything seems to be related to a game with them, even the way that the Trials event is set up. You're flown in, and then showcased with yours and the opposing team, each one of them displayed with simple messages announcing each round. Attack, defend, attack, defend. What I find most funny is how the Emissary points out verses, and then starts to highlight the new team. As much as you can simply call this an element of gameplay, and I certainly wouldn't argue with you, the words she says during the Trials don't help this case. Certain fighting game fans may know where I'm going with this.
Heaven or hell?
Heaven or hell. Duel 1. Let's rock.
A lot of these small quips and suggestions really make the Trials stand out as another fighting game. Added, the idea of unlocking keys doesn't have any significant interest for just the 9, or at least so I can figure. They seem to show a proving ground of the soul, standing up for what it is the 9 believe in to some degree. I mean, there's plenty of keys that exist within Destiny, but the Emissary speaks on them as proving levels more than anything. I just may not be able to make a connection with these keys at all right now, and I'm totally okay with admitting that. Still, if they are just used as a tool for progression of the soul and values of the 9, then this plays right into the hand of how you receive loot, fight against your fellow Guardian, and go home triumphant afterward. It's the best explanation I can come up with. To shift gears a bit, Destiny has this theme of power. Both the 9 and Calus of the Raid offer us power, but both offer it in different meanings and ways. Calus needs us to prove to him that we're worthy of taking up an audience with him, even after we've killed Gaul, his major target within the Golden Invitation. The 9, on the other hand, offer it in combat against one another, to grow how we fight one another, and to become more proficient in fighting other Guardians. Still, as much as both of these forces and philosophies want to grant us more power, I do find some of the loot interesting, to say the least. But that's for another day when I can talk about Calus. For now, I'm going to say that I trust the 9 much more than I thought before. Their motives are still very much unclear, but I can still see them as staunch allies in the fight against the darkness. And now for a taste of things to come. You could call this the final game that I wish to play for now. Reality is the finest flesh, O bearer mine, and are you not hungry, O bearer mine? What kind of talking skull would address its host that way? A stiff, stuck-up old fossil, not me. Ahamkara, the illusion that one's ego depends on an object, or an idea, or a body. Some people say you should have no Ahamkara. Some people say you need to have the right Ahamkara. All I know is that you are not an illusion. Understand? This world around you, the people you meet, they're a little thin, right? Cardboard and drywall. Cheap theater. Come on, try it out. Say, I am more real than this. Feels good, doesn't it? I am the only real person here. Isn't it like their insults and their bullets just went a little soft? I came to find you, only you, because you're special. You're from somewhere real. And together, we can burn our way back there. Can't we? Oh, player mine. This rabbit hole is a pretty steep one, but I hope by the end you guys will understand where I'm coming from. There's no fun in any of this if I can't speculate to my heart's content, and last I checked, you guys kind of enjoy hearing my crazy theories. I'm going to leave the skull of Dire Ahamkara up on screen, which is where we stopped last time, so give it a read if you'd like. Pause the video if we go too fast, or you can't listen and read at the same time. Trust me, I know I generally can't. A lot of newer information we seem to be presented with in Destiny 2 seems to be more visual than written. I think that's somewhat fair to say when ghost scans are like, this crystal, this crate, this banner. You get the point. Obviously this isn't always the case, but it does serve to show a few things right off the bat. You know, like us going to a singularity to apparently take place in this nonsense. But hold it. You're gonna tell me that we're fighting in or around and visiting a black hole? Let's take a step back here. The closest possible black hole, and please note I said possible because this can change in the next minute we talk, is in a system called V616 Monocerotis. This system is about 3,300 light-years away and currently consists of a K-type star, or a smaller dwarf star, and another region that is, to paraphrase NASA, a stellar mass that cannot be a star. Now, keep in mind, we don't know the status of the star that circles this black hole, and for all we know, if we entered that system, it would actually be completely gone. 3,300 light-years roughly translates to 19 quadrillion miles away, and it takes about 3,300 years for that object's light and activity to reach us here on Earth. To some, that's obvious, but for those needing a small idea on how light years work, that's the basic gist. When you look up at the night sky, you may literally be seeing ghosts. You could thank William Herschel for that image. Okay, solar masses and light years aside, what does that mean for us? If you played Destiny before, you'll be rather familiar with the mission Restoration. I mean, it is the first mission after you go out to the Cosmodrome. Here you pick up an NLS drive. If you're not familiar with the shorthand, NLS stands for Near Light Speed, and this means we're not quite able to travel at the speed of light. Well, obviously you'll wonder what the speed of light is, which is roughly 671 million miles per hour, but the math and data is completely near moot if near light speed is the fastest we can get to within space travel in Destiny. Just to quickly stomp on the idea of the Golden Age possibly having something faster, the colonists that were on board any colony ships were put into some kind of stasis. They were gearing up for a pretty long trip. In case you're wondering about what we have in the City Age, however, there are some hints that we've improved NLS drives. They aren't released yet, but sitting in the database are two items, a standard NLS drive and a finely tuned one. I'm led to believe that these are the same drives that may go into our ships, which tells me that's still as fast as we can go, which means light speed or faster is unattainable for our Guardians. So, getting back to the black hole, how the heck are we able to see this thing? This is one of two things: a complete oversight on Bungie's part, giving us an area in space we shouldn't be able to access safely without it affecting our solar system, or it's not there. Let's take this from another direction. The closest star system to us is Proxima Centauri at about 4.2 light years away. Assuming we can't go faster than the speed of light, this could still take us over 5 years to get to this location. This also assumes that something happened that pushed Proxima into some kind of supernova, which may not even cause a black hole, and that's just, well, our star is going to give out before Proxima does. We'll put it that way. 5 years without our Guardian within the solar system, with Ikora at the very least, wondering where the heck we've gone, not being able to sense us or communicate with us. You know, she or Cade would at least be mildly concerned. And that's just to get there, not to get back. That's a 10-year round trip. I hope this is making some kind of sense, but the long story short here is there shouldn't be a black hole that close to us. Aside from very few instances, black holes are small and usually very dormant out in open space, unless they are acted upon in some manner. Without some kind of matter to suck up into the black hole, there's no reason for this thing to be active, and clearly, there's a lot of star junk hanging around. Now, with the forces we know of in Destiny, I won't discount the idea that there could be something acting upon a star or dormant black hole, but the possibilities in known science are very low. Black holes can be tracked, albeit not easily through X-rays. For all of this to make a bit more sense, we have to look at what the Ahamkara seem to be. Ahamkara are fascinating and awesome creatures within Destiny's lore, but sadly we've never seen one, at least so we think. I mean, they're friggin' dragons. Could we at least see one of them? Please? Part of this may have to do with one of the signature forces that Ahamkara seem to utilize, which is manipulation of the mind. As the Skull of Dire Ahamkara seems to suggest, they plant thoughts and illusion into your head, making you question what you might see, feel, experience. But they also have powers that are highly sought after, usually in the category of adding an extra grenade or melee attack, granting extra of something else to the wielder of their items. And those are just their bones. I'll read off an old grimoire card about the Great Ahamkara hunts if you're not familiar, and you'll pick up on what I mean almost immediately. After great deliberation, it was determined that the Ahamkara be made extinct. It was not an easy decision. Power had been obtained from the bargains, and the city needed power. Knowledge had been gleaned, and the Ahamkara knew answers to questions no one had known to ask. But the price was too high, and no edict or forbearance seemed to stop Guardians from seeking them out, driven by hope or vengeance or despair. The call had to be silenced, so the Great Hunt did its work. And thus the Ahamkara were made extinct, their call silenced, their solipsistic flatteries erased, their great design, if it ever existed, broken. Of this you can be assured, O reader mine. The last line is a common phrase for the Ahamkara. O reader mine, O bearer mine. Any variation on this phrase is generally questioned as being related to either the worm gods of the Hive or an Ahamkara. During these hunts, hunters and warlocks seem to be very proficient in killing them. However, Shaxx and Zavala apparently took one down as well back in the day through some dialogue that Zavala tells us in a strike.
Danger is a natural habitat for ghosts and their guardians. If you need some motivation, I can tell you about the time Lord Shaxx and I hunted an Ahamkara.
The last line of this grimoire card also serves to show that maybe, just maybe, the Ahamkara didn't all die out. With the level of manipulation they may possess in making us think by sheer suggestion that we killed every Ahamkara, that's pretty impressive to say the least. I mentioned it in our last episode, but to reiterate the Long Tomorrow 9G, some of them survived. I know a fellow says he saw a Wish Dragon on Jupiter a ways back. Again, Wish Dragon is often thought to be compared to that of the Ahamkara. This manipulation seems to carry over into a few other aspects of the main focus of this series, however, and that's the Nine. Xur is one of the prime reasons I want to call this level of manipulation a question, and to question the power that the Ahamkara may have. Xur is seemingly controlled by something, or at least has some level of controlled consciousness. I don't think that can be argued at all. One of his famous quotes, "I do not entirely control my movements." Again, he has some level of control to do what he wishes, but overall, Xur is a puppet. For better or worse, he also likes to bring a lot of Ahamkara-laced goodies along with him, and wow, we really did have a lot of them back in Destiny, didn't we? We still have a few that came over into Destiny 2, but most of them don't really tell us much else from what they did before, minus being able to acquire Ahamkara bones through some resellers. Maybe Xur's to blame for that. Silly tentacle face. Further, Xur is a gathering of dead cells, and though I need to discuss this at another time, it does make me wonder what else may have the ability to act upon dead cells with the information we're presented with thus far in Destiny's lore. I would also very much argue that your teammates and opponents within the Trials of the Nine are simple illusion, while there you sit in your ship, flying about for a few hours. Then what about the gear that we're handed? Well, Ahamkara were called Wish Dragons. It's just a theory, but I'm going with the possibility that they could fabricate this gear from engrams, glimmer, or otherwise. I'm just saying, there's loads of gear that we still don't have an idea where it comes from. Read over the Foe Tracer, for example, a helmet that looks familiar, but was modified. I thought I was dead. Held my own for a bit, but I could hear the wizard wasn't alone, and she'd be coming for whoever took out her spawn. It was just lying there, honestly. Looked like a standard old Outrider kit, but it had this rig, enough small diamond conduits to make me think it was something pulled out of those old Bray labs in the M&P. I don't just go putting things on my head, but I was desperate. Not sure what activated the thing, but sure enough, there she was. I already had a lock on her, and once I engaged, there was nowhere she could hide. You might be thinking I'm suggesting the 9 then are Ahamkara. I'm not. In fact, I don't necessarily think any of the beings we've seen are the 9, or even of little ones we've heard of so far, but that's for another time. There's one other major thing that seems true of the Ahamkara, and it's that they seem to be able to traverse the void, very similarly to that of the Traveler. Questions exist thanks to Ghost Fragment Warlock whether the Ahamkara were brought about to life by the Traveler's terraforming on Venus, or if they existed before. Parts of the Books of Sorrow suggest they may have lived before the Traveler arrived in our solar system, but either case puts them in a prime position to be used by the 9 for this mind-warping property that they seem to hold. The gear that we have consisting of Ahamkara bones focuses on the subclasses that use void and solar light, and this seems to further this concept of understanding void energies and rifts. If they are in fact around Jupiter, then this places them in line to be around Europa and in a key position to work with the Awoken, especially if there are any of them traversing that flux tube we talked about earlier, or they could just be fabricating nonsense. The third spire itself is a questionable area, built around this strange contraption that looks like something Dr. Manhattan would have made up. Looking outward, there's no sign of the black hole space we saw before. There's no sign of the deep black that we fly into. There is light, a sun, planets. This space simply shouldn't be here. The black hole simply shouldn't be here. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't line up, and it's the largest question of the trials I have so far. The manipulations of the Ahamkara just line up with what we're seeing here, quite possibly. Anyway, I can ramble on and on about the Ahamkara, but I think I'll cut it there. Not a lot makes sense with the space we travel to, and I would think twice about trusting that unknown space you enter. All you're doing, by my logic and current, is placing yourself at risk of falling prey to an Ahamkara, just like the Guardians of old. After all, the city is still worried about them. Consensus Meeting 3234.43 Zavala, Guardian Ariadne Gris, have you had contact with an Ahamkara? Ariadne Gris, no. New Monarchy, then why does your sparrow bear a dragon logo? Ariadne, because dragons are cool. New Monarchy, if Ms. Gris won't take this seriously, Kate 6. Play nice, Ari. Hideo's knickers are really tight today. Ariadne, I thought a dragon would look cool in my sparrow. Not all dragons are Ahamkaras. Zavala, Ikora? Your perspective? Ikora Ray, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Are we really still talking about this? Dead Orbit, muffled laughter. Ikora Ray, obviously Gris has not had contact with an Ahamkara. FWC, how do you know? Ikora, if she had, she'd win SRL more often. Ariadne, harsh, Ray. Zavala, then let the record show. The consensus's official stance on the Dinas Emrys dragon symbol is cool. A not so clear result of whether the Ahamkara hunts were in fact a success, wouldn't you say? So, as we continue on with our look at the 9, we're brought on to the part where we look at their representatives, Xur and the Emissary. Both of these seem to be linked together for more than just their involvement with the 9, and I will warn ahead of time, some of my thoughts here may be considered a bit morbid, but when you're dealing with Xur, especially being a cluster of dead cells, well, I don't really have much of a choice now, do I? The Emissary will be the first we take a look at. She seems to exist, but then not exist all at the same time, able to change her location on a whim from platform to platform, or even existing on all of them at once. Of course, going flawless in trials reveals something even more interesting, with the Emissary changing size altogether. This certainly suggests that our Guardian is into some kind of hallucinogens, if you ask me. Added, her mouth doesn't move when she speaks, and there seems to be another voice underneath her own, seemingly a male's voice.
You faced judgment relentless, and now you're here. at the end of all things. You are worthy. When the time comes, seek us out. Watch for us on the filaments of dark matter, in the hydrocarbon pits of distant moons.
This duality at face value really makes me think of some type of double speech or a sock puppet mentality. This isn't entirely above the Nine, however, especially with Xur. Xur is nothing more than a culmination of dead cells being risen from some unknown location, possibly permanently or temporarily. Not much is known of how Xur acts and handles, how he's formed, who he speaks to, well, minus his ramblings in the Nine, of course. At current, the emissary doesn't speak on the Nine themselves, or at least that I've been able to hear, and I'm led to believe we may have another case of the speaker on our hands. I speak for the Nine, but I never said I knew what the hell they were. Again, this is semi-face value, especially with that male voice undertoning her own in certain voice segments. We don't hear it in everything she says, but certainly all of the important dialogue that she has. The rest seems repeated, like a repeated part of a message, which comes down to something she's already heard or been told to say. What's also interesting is how the emissary communicates with us on the field. She has no ghost, seemingly, and has no other means to communicate with us on the battlefield. We still hear her voice when we're fighting, however, even if it's just simple phrases, introductions, and so on. This makes me really think there's something more going on here, and this, again, ties back with the Ahamkara and their terms of suggestion, being able to addle the mind with thoughts and ideas that may not necessarily be true. Anyway, the Nine are not above some kind of puppeteers. Being that the Ahamkara are very much into mild to severe manipulation of the mind, I'm really left to feel some level of control with the emissary as well. After all, emissary defines as a person sent on a special mission, usually as a diplomatic representative. The last word is the big deal here, representative. Xur could very much showcase as the same thing, being a representative of the Nine's power and what they may offer us. Neither position is very different, just a matter of how you may view them, with the high spinny tower being the place the emissary resides, out in unknown space, and Xur's playground being the solar system, out scouting the place for information about us or otherwise. The emissary's main feature, the jewel in her chest, harkens back to a bit of old sci-fi as well, even though it's a movie I don't generally like to talk about. Bungie has a serious knack for making me do this, I swear. Star Trek the Motion Picture has a character named Ilia, played by Perseus Khambatta. Her character is seemingly abducted or broken down into computer code for use by the antagonist, simply known as V'ger. V'ger uses Ilia throughout the movie as a type of probe to seek out information on the crew of the Enterprise. This is mostly done by the jewel that sits in her chest, and in a later scene, Spock is seen trying to mind meld with it. This jewel, it seems, is the holder of all that information and the key to Ilia's ability to transmit it back to V'ger. My extreme nerdism aside, I can't help but see a similar feature here with the emissary. As it is, if I'm onto something with the ideas of the Ahamkara being in control of some levels of the Nine, then perhaps this extends out to the emissary and to Xur. First, however, let's talk about Xur a bit because I feel like I haven't given a lot of love to old Tentacle Face. Xur talks of himself as a collection of dead cells. He says some existed on Earth while others came from other planets and moons around the system. He mentions about feeling pain or something akin to it while being in the inner worlds of the solar system, and he continues to talk about his ability to control his movements. My actions are not my own, and such phrases otherwise. The Ahamkara fit this bill to a T, and it's hard for me to avoid that thought altogether, at least. After all, Xur speaks on the message he was meant to carry to us, but he seems to forget it by the time he reaches us in the tower. Suggestion can be a powerful tool, but without some kind of constant reminder, it loses its grip over the possessed. Xur walks about with a lot of Ahamkara bone-laced equipment. He deals it to us along both games and seems to be able to get a hold of the stuff rather easily. What better way to exact some kind of revenge on those whom sought to wipe out your species than to addle the minds of those whom killed some of your kin? His dress seems also cobbled together of warlocks, hunters, titans, and all, or at least some semblance thereof, suggesting a possible origin, but that's for next time. The Nine also seem to know about us rather well, and I can't help feel that part of that is due to Xur being around the tower to gather information on us, scouting for potentials far in advance. Anyway, Xur seems like a fairly real personage. We interact with him. He's within typical spaces that we can visit, and all seems pretty well and fine with him. It's the emissary that I have a problem with. She appears to be in one place, then another, then another. And if you were to pull out your ghost within the spire, then you'd see she exists on multiple levels at any given time. Her dress seems rather dignified, but it's her natural characteristics that worry me in a way. The eyes she seems to have mimic those of Xur, a feature that glows and pierces into the eyes of the beholder. Whether there's significance here or simply just the way we're meant to see her is up for debate. Her left foot to the middle of her calf is a bit odd, however. It's almost like she has one foot in with the darkness. Then again, it's hard to not point out the other obvious tie-in with her feature, that bandana-like mask she seems to have over her eyes. Though it's not the same, it's an interesting parallel with another Dark Touch member of Destiny we know of. Come home when you can, Eris. You're missed by some. Anyway, the jewel in her chest, the clothing she wears, her features in general, if the black hole in the space we visit is simply an illusion crafted by the Ahamkara, then she possibly could be as well. Think about this for a moment. The voice she has, the female one, sounds real enough. It rattles off bits of judgment now and again. Truly, however, the voice that's most interesting is the one underneath it all, the male voice. We've discussed already that the Nine are not without some kind of sock puppet mentality. To simply use the emissary, her lips not moving, her ability to speak with us through telepathy, her dual speech pattern and dual sounding voice, well, not only is it like the scales of judgment balancing male and female, but it also makes me think she's simply something for us to look at, for the shape of something to have taken, similar to what we see in my continued favorite grimoire card, Majestic Majestic, where a manifestation of darkness takes over an ogre. Or it could be an elaborate lie, one that simply tests who we are as individuals on a team, one that looks down on us in combat to see if our personality is a fit for what the Nine are truly looking for, using the Ahamkara as a conduit for this power, while the true Nine speak through them to us, with this seemingly different creature we've never seen before. I think this also calls to my feelings on if the emissary is the queen, and I have to give a deadpan, no, I don't believe so. I see no evidence to support it, and the line about, oh hell, here.
I can hear you clearly. My brother is too distant.
Xur is a male. Xur could easily fit the bill of being something similar to a brother to the emissary, just as much as the ideas of Mara Sov and Uldren Sov. When dealing with the Ahamkara, however, I can't help but stress the importance of not trusting everything you hear and taking it at face value. Plus, the emissary and Xur both have tentacles, at least in different positions. Xur I can trust being a real thing, but the emissary? I don't trust her any more than I can talk with her, and I seemingly can't do that to begin with. Our ghost is silent the whole way through the observations of us in the trials. We have no more answers of what she or the Nine are, minus that they seemingly want to help us, and they seemingly want to know what we're made of. This is the shortest chapter we have to speak on, but don't think it ends here. Xur still has one major point to talk about in particular, namely, how his cells are risen, and who is involved in doing so. We'll be covering the Long Walk, the sniper rifle that seems to be the only clear sense of common sense lore that we can uncover about the Nine. The rest of the weapons, per my thinking, do tie back to some more of the legends of the Nine, but they don't really add much except more riddles, doublespeak, and questions, or a process of the Nine's judgment. The Long Walk is of particular interest, especially when we break down who it is that's talking, or at least seems like it. Before we read things over, however, I want to make it clear my thoughts on lore as it is in Destiny 2. I feel that weapons and items are directly linked back to their main sources, for instance, here with the Long Walk being a weapon that relates to the Nine. I feel that anything referenced within it, as with several Grimoire cards in the past, would be a direct correlation to the main material. However, this has not always been the case with lore in the past, and I understand that. Destiny 2 seems to be a particular different breed of lore that we need to fully decipher. That being said, let's move on with the Long Walk. 8 sparks, a 9th dim in the corner, and Orin in the middle. Orin, are we all here? Come into the light, please. G9, I like where I am. Orin, they said you all went to the deep without a ship. How? G7, our charges are gone, but we're still creatures of light, no different from the one you carry in your pocket. Orin, you're all either very brave or very foolish. G6, you sound like Shax. G5, she does. I'm glad my charge is gone. G4, don't say that. G5, it's true. G4, don't say it out loud. Some of us go our whole lives without finding one. Show some respect. G5, don't talk like you're better than me. You're in here too. Orin, please. I'm sorry to call you all here, but G2, you're not sorry. Orin, I need to know what you found out there. G9, nothing. Orin, at least give me the coordinates. Let's get the elephant out of the room. Orin seems like a guardian from the one phrase that the one ghost here, which is G7, states, no different from the one you carry in your pocket. Oh yeah, these are totally ghosts. Okay, it at least gives off the vast impression that these are ghosts. A few words really stand out. In the top portion, it says sparks, which can be easily called little lights. And if I need to reference that...
Little light.
Little light.
Don't do that. I'm a ghost, actually.
They also speak on either losing their charges or never having found one. A charge in my interpretation here would be a guardian, and that would say not all of these ghosts had them, but perhaps most of them did. I'm going to venture a guess on the identity of these ghosts, and they're ones that we know of within the grimoire so far. Holborn's host references 7 lost ghosts within the Titan grimoire card. A ghost without a guardian. I remember when I was risen, when I woke in that wreckage, to see my ghost hovering there, its light in my eyes like an angel, and it said, "This story again. Disrespectful youngster." Youngster? I could be older than you, Taban. True. The guard brace is fine now. Stop worrying about it. Will you take the Jigoku? Thought I'd take the long rifle. Bale has the Jigoku. Good. That ghost. What do you think is wrong with it? It's echoing something ancient and old Earth language. You know, what the ghost reminds me of flittering about over there. I don't. The time ghosts from Jaggy's host came back without them. Remember? They got in that fight some point east of the Caspian. 7 ghosts, damn near silent, buzzing with some sort of corruption, drifting back to the tower, one by one. Scared the speaker well enough. I remember. A long time ago. Jaggy tells the story differently. Well, that accounts for 7 ghosts, and I don't think this one that Holborn is talking to would be one of them, due to the possible timing of the 9 emerging within our system, but that's for a different day. I'll sum this up as easy as I can. Jaggy's host losing their guardians doesn't have a time placed on it. We don't necessarily know when Holborn was out on Mars either, but it may have been before the Cabal were on the planet, or perhaps even after our guardian clears the exclusion zone, which means a time we were able to freely get out there before the city was fully constructed, or even a time after. We don't know of any dealings with the 9 during the early days of Destiny either, meaning the time of the Iron Lords, so I'm left to assume that the 9 popped up somewhere around the Queen's time in the Reef, but sometime after we may have started to collect underneath the Traveler. Oh God, why did I bring the Queen up? The Queen's relation to the 9 is for an entirely different day, and I really wonder how far I want to take these ideas of the 9 and her involvement. Anywho, let's move on. At least one of these ghosts never found a guardian. This is alluded to by G4. It was the first one to be quick to defend one of the other ghosts, or even itself, so the question remains who it might be. But the last one, Ghost 9, it seems to have this extreme like of the dark, saying, "I like where I am." I won't argue the possibility that any being that comes in contact with the dark, no matter how much they say they're still beings of the light, could just be very comfortable in the dark. Still, as lost ghosts go, there's one in particular that could have a real want to understand the darkness in order to try and save his charge and friend, Dredgen Yor. What? Whoa, hang on with the dislike button. Hear me out here. This ghost seems to be quick to appreciate the darkness. I feel it important to read excerpts of Thorn 3 from here, so let's look over this a bit more. I should note that the first one that's here, the 1.0, is going to be listed as the ghost, and the 2.0 will be listed at Dredgen Yor. You were not always this man. True. Then the math says you do not need to remain this man. You can be other. I am other. You can be better. This is better. That matter, at best, is subjective. Then what? Lesser. Some would say. But what would you say? To throw in a bit of interpretation here, I've always felt the ghost just didn't have the understanding it needed of the dark to really give a full answer back to Yor in this case. Looking at you here, now, the smoke, ash, and bone at your feet mark you as so much less. Maybe, and yet here you are. Meaning, you have been at my side every step of the way. Where else would I be? Yet you disagree so thoroughly with my change in perspective. If only the change was simply one of perspective, your evolution was no choice. This is not you having come to an understanding after careful considered thought. This is corruption. Yor's ghost is seen here still having a lot of feelings for Yor, as I'd expect. Ghosts are, after all, bonded to us from the moment we revive. His want to turn Yor back to the light is of interest in this passage, however. Consider this my last good deed. I am releasing you from the burden of my deeds, both done and yet to come. I will not abandon you. You will, or I will carve the light from your shell and leave the carcass of my first and last friend in the dirt of this dull, red world for no one to find. Then I failed you completely. Not me. Maybe the man I was. He is truly dead. I believe so. Belief is not fact. Semantics I no longer have the patience for. Once again, Yor's ghost calls up interest in not abandoning him to the darkness. From here, Yor's ghost and Yor himself part ways. They seemingly go to do whatever else they wish, or at least to a point. It's argued that perhaps Yor's ghost went to the aid of Jaren Ward, the original owner of the Last Word, and that could be true, but I doubt that past telling the story to someone and Jaren picking up on the trail of the Lost Guardian Dredgen Yor, this ghost still held on to some kind of hope. With other Lost Guardians from Jaggi or other ghosts entirely, his hope could have been to save Yor, or at least understand what Yor was going on about. I could also just be making my own headcanon that has gone pretty far off the beaten path, or as beaten path as the Nine get. As another note, they could also be part of the Jovian Guard, whom we don't know much about per this point. A lot of possibilities. I like mine better, don't care. Anyway, what's the significance of introducing the ghosts? Well, that comes back to Xur, or at least I think so. Ghosts have a type of pattern that they store about their guardian. This allows the ghost to reconstruct and heal their guardian in a hurry, gathering up the necessary light that is needed to heal them. With ghosts that have been touched by the darkness, or at least so they say, the question is how their light may have been affected. We know that ghosts can heal us without the light, but they can't revive us without a constant flow of light. That opening definitely caused some feels, man. Anyway, with these ghosts referred to as sparks, it makes me think that they are losing their light, or at the very least, their connection. Okay, where am I going with this? Ghosts hold copies of guardians. They need light to revive and heal to a point. The revival part is the important part when dealing with Xur. Even if my idea on the Guardian pattern being used to revive Xur is wrong, the idea that a set of ghosts could gather enough light to revive certain cells of a culmination of cells, I don't think that's too outlandish. There's nothing that proves this, but it would be an interesting reason for why ghosts would be involved with the Nine. Well, these ghosts would have to be the Nine then, yeah? Nah. The ghosts that are here are involved with the Nine. The Ahamkara are involved with the Nine. I mean, these ghosts had to go out and touch the Void somehow, and the Ahamkara seem to have the ability to ride the Void or touch space in some way. The legend, after all, states, the Nine are ghosts who peered the deep black without a ship and meditated on the hissing silence of the heliopause. It just ties together well, you know? The Nine haven't revealed themselves to us yet, We haven't seen anything more than what we want to see, with them showing us through the thought manipulations of the Ahamkara, living on the legends that have been passed down over the ages of who the Nine are. The Nine will continue to be enigmatic until they call for us again, on the lines of filaments of dark matter, in the hydrocarbon pits of distant moons, in a signal from deep space, on the speech of viral pure meaning. The Nine are going to remain that way until they wish to open up the doors, using proxies and other competent forces around the solar system to assist in their endeavors. The Awoken are no different, a means to an end, or one that gave them an advantage. The Awoken did not have a choice. We did. Xur very cryptically leaves this message for us once in a while. Anyway, the Nine are easily set off, telling Mara Sov to keep away from certain sectors of space, to act in certain ways, and to keep distance away from the Nine. It almost feels like there's two coalitions forming within our little soul system, all these players on the field. All of them beings we've cast out already, or have a hard time allying with. The Ahamkara seemingly killed off by us. Infected ghosts left with little to no other home but to be deactivated. The Awoken wanting to hold on to their birthright and not ally with us in the tower too openly unless absolutely needed. Whatever the Nine may be, cast out or never allied with us in the first place, a new force, one of darkness or light, it's unknown. What I will say is I'm willing to understand this idea of judgment they offer us a bit more. They don't seem to practice the ideas of sword logic like that of Callus. They seem more open to the ideas of using our powers and training our light, somewhat similar to that of a certain guardian that left her station of her own free will. But after a long time of sitting here and listening to my thoughts, perhaps for a second time or for the first, that rounds out my ideas of the Nine. This possible collective of entities that makes me wonder what else or who else is out even within our solar system. The Nine presents so much, yet so little, full of lies, full of mystery, and full of possibility. My thoughts, after all, are just the tip of the iceberg. So many others have their own. As always, if you enjoyed this video, or really this collection of videos from over the past month or so, you know the buttons to press. This was an overwhelming vote from the community to see this happen, and I hope you all enjoyed it. If you have thoughts, share them below, but if you're not sure what to say, you can leave the very expected phrase, the Nine, below, in honor of the collective that had my mind reeling with possibility. Bow to no one, Guardian. I'll see you next Spacetime. Take care.